It's time to pardon the turkey from the whole turkey makes you tired myth and get some real facts. So, first of all, where's the myth come from? Basically, the myth says that turkey has a bunch of tryptophan, and tryptophan is a precursor for making melatonin, which is a hormone or this chemical messenger that makes you sleepy. Couple problems with this. One is, yes, turkey does have tryptophan, but so do basically everything that has protein. So turkey doesn't have any more tryptophan than other meats, or even like cheese has more. So tryptophan is an amino acid. It's one of the protein building blocks or protein letters. And so basically, when you break down protein, you can get tryptophan. And so yes, you get more tryptophan when you eat turkey, but you also get more tryptophan when you eat a bunch of other foods. Second of all, there's not really just a direct relationship between eating more tryptophan and getting sleepier. So we need to talk a little more about this pathway to actually how do you get from tryptophan to melatonin to this hormone that is going to then make you tired. So basically tryptophan, it can go through different metabolic pathways. So basically metabolism refers to the making and breaking of molecules. Just like we can make tryptophan, we can get tryptophan by breaking down proteins, and we can make proteins by putting tryptophan in with other amino acids into these chains that fold up to make proteins. Basically metabolism, making and breaking. And so one of the things that you can do also with tryptophan, it's not only making proteins, you can also make different chemical messengers. And so tryptophan is a precursor to serotonin and melatonin. And so serotonin is associated with happiness as well as other things, and melatonin is associated with sleepiness. The melatonin is actually only made in very specific parts of your body. Mostly, the one that we are talking about is the pineal gland, which is this little gland in your brain. And so a gland, this is something that makes hormones, so it makes these chemical messengers that are actually secreted into the bloodstream, as well as like your cerebrospinal fluid. And so basically, these are secreting this message out, as opposed to like serotonin is what we call a neurotransmitter, and so basically it just sends a message between your nerve cells, whereas melatonin is basically sending out this signal, and then cells that have receptors for the melatonin can respond. So a hormone's kind of like sending out a radio broadcast signal, and then cells that have the receptors for it are like tuned into the station. They can receive the message and then do things like whatever happens in your brain to make you tired. I'm not a neuroscientist, but I'm a biochemist, and the biochemistry is telling us that it's really not as simple as just the tryptophan going straight into melatonin, because you have to think about that tryptophan actually getting into the location, into the pineal gland, in order to make that happen. When you're eating this turkey, you're also eating it with like a bunch of carbohydrates, and so those are going to basically get you to make insulin, your pancreas, so an organ in your body, to secrete insulin. Insulin is another hormone. This one is actually going to tell cells to let in glucose, so like blood sugar, which is where we often think about insulin, but it also tells cells to let in large neutral amino acids, so these LNAs. These LNAs include tryptophan, but they also include like isoleucine, valine, methionine, phenylalanine, tyrosine. So basically, you have tryptophan competing with all of these other amino acids to get into cells. And what happens is that in your bloodstream, you have what's happening is this tryptophan is actually going to be tied up by binding to this blood protein called albumin. So your blood is like chock full of albumin, and the tryptophan is going to bind to it more than those other amino acids. And so the tryptophan is going to have less of the tryptophan is going to get into those cells that are relying on having that insulin, getting the LNAs and taking things in. So in your bloodstream, you're going to be taking in a lot of those other amino acids, more so than the tryptophan, which is still going to be tied up in that albumin. So this means when it comes to getting to that blood-brain barrier, you're going to have less competition for that tryptophan, and those brain cells are also going to have more of the receptors for those those amino acids are going to have a higher affinity for the tryptophan. So there's less competition, and it's easier for the tryptophan to get in. Okay, so you're thinking, okay, well, cool, we're getting this insulin. This is making our brain cells take in more of that tryptophan. Tryptophan makes melatonin, right? Well, problem is that your that competition and that bloodstream and all of that stuff, that's happening at the blood-brain barrier. And a lot of your brain is protected by this blood-brain barrier, but the pineal gland, the part that's actually making the melatonin, it's not. And so it sees the same competition as all your other cells see that are just relying on like the bloodstream rather than this like blood-brain barrier. So it's seeing all the same competition and the issues you have with the tryptophan being tied up in the albumin. So it's not that the insulin is getting your brain cells to take in more of the tryptophan, and so really you're not really changing that situation too much. You're just yes, you are taking in more tryptophan, but you're also taking in more of those other amino acids. So it's really not this clear-cut relationship, even if turkey did have more tryptophan than other protein sources. So what is making you tired? Well, there's a couple things. Basically, the biggest thing is that you're probably just your body is spending a lot of energy to break down all that food you just ate. Probably you ate that turkey as part of a big meal, and now your body is going to spend a lot of energy trying to break that down. You might also have some inebriation in there, hopefully not too much. And if you're like me and you're an introvert, even if you didn't have turkey because you're a vegetarian, even if you didn't drink anything because you don't drink, you still had a lot of socialization, which can be exhausting. But so the bottom line is turkey doesn't have more tryptophan than other protein sources. Even if it did, tryptophan isn't, although it's used as a precursor for making melatonin, it's really not this simple relationship between you just eat tryptophan and voila, you're tired. Especially because your body has a ton of different regulatory pathways, and so it's never just a simple relationship between like eating one thing and some effect, because tryptophan is also used for a lot of other things. You have all those other amino acids. It's all really complicated. And so it's not that simple relationship. It's not just the turkey's fault, and it's not even tryptophan, just tryptophan's fault. So I hope that helped you understand why it's not the turkey that's making you tired, at least not fully and not mainly.